Zeltzer with KPFA Radio, and I'm with
Bill Campisi.
Bill. Can you talk about what happened in the court and your views about what's going on at KPFA, this issue of the election?
Well, I just think that there is an important principle at stake in this election. I have to say, I have nothing against Tom Vorhees, and I'm sure he'd be a fine board member. It's not about Tom Vorhees. I just think that it's clear in the bylaws that there is there are provisions that permit the delegates to select who they want to select for director. And STV voting, or the other kind of voting that Janet Coburn talks about, which I don't really understand completely, does allow for minority candidates to be elected, and I think that's a good thing. Right now, on the KPF board, there is a very large majority, so it's harder for minority candidates to get elected. But that situation exists, and I don't think that the board should usurp the power given to our delegates to elect directors, or make decisions like we made regarding Susan De Silva in terms of not having to follow a write-in candidate list where you get a couple of people, we get one person voting for himself, and then that person's supposed to be appointed to the delegate assembly. I don't think that's a good way to do things.
Now, you have argued that if KPFA takes a decision in an election, which is not the decision the Pacifica National Board feels is the process of the election, that the solution is to try to work it out, or the Pacifica Board suing the KPFA. Can you talk about that?
Well, in general, what I really think should happen is that the bylaws should be modified to have a dispute resolution process. That's missing from the bylaws, and there should have been one. And there could be one that was put in that would be pretty quick and efficient and not too expensive. But the solution is not to simply say that the board controls the outcome of all, is the ultimate judge of all director elections. That goes against Robert's Rules of Order. I think that goes against the principles of sound, I think that goes against sound organizational principles. You don't want to put the people who are in the position of being elected in charge of the election completely and totally. It's not a good idea.
But, I mean, you argue that if it can't be resolved, the difference between the Pacifica National Board and KPFA, that the solution is for the Pacifica Board to sue KPFA. Can you talk about any other example of a corporation or nonprofit corporation suing a subordinate body to follow the procedure?
Well, if Robert's Rules of Order is correct and it applies to us, then the electoral body, in this case the Delegate Assembly, is the ultimate judge of elections. That's what Robert's Rules of Order says, and actually that's what our bylaws say. So if there is no dispute resolution process beyond that, then the only resort is to court. Now, Alex Steinberg, nor did anyone on the KPFA board or the delegates, nobody came to us and said, look, we don't like what happened. Can you do something about it? The first thing that happened was this motion.
No, but what I'm asking you is not just about,
Yes, I've taken that position, and I agree with that position. If there is an intractable dispute between the Delegate Assembly and the National Board regarding any aspect of an election to fill a director's seat or to fill a midterm delegate vacancy, and the parties can't resolve it, then the resort has to be to court.
No, what I'm asking you, do you know any example where a nonprofit corporation or corporation has sued a subordinate body to carry out what they decide is the necessary action?
Well, I disagree with the premise of your question that the Delegate Assembly in that context is a subordinate body. But the answer to your question is I do not. But then again, I am not a corporate attorney. I'm a medical malpractice attorney. So I actually know very little about corporate law and the organization of corporations.
Okay, thanks. The other issue is the future of Pacifica and KPFA. You were in favor of bankruptcy as a solution to the financial problems of Pacifica and Network. What do you think about the loan that was got by Grace Aarons and others in Los Angeles to forestall a bankruptcy?
I'm actually somewhat indifferent to whether a loan is gotten or bankruptcy is gotten. Fine, a loan's fine with me. I don't, and I wasn't opposed to Tom Vorhees on the issue of bankruptcy or loan. To me, if people want to get a loan and there's a majority to do it, get a loan. The problem with the loan is the requirement that it be paid. And the problem with that is the sale or swap of a license. And the swap of a license requires a membership vote. And so the odds are of getting a membership vote in time to meet the obligation to pay the loan, I think, are pretty small. And if the obligation is not met and the loan is collateralized with our buildings, Pacifica is going to go down the drain. And bankruptcy might have been a better option, and if that's what happens. Now, on the other hand, if the swap is accomplished and the loan is paid, well, good. I don't care. I'm just dubious about it. I'm afraid about it. That's all.
Ford Green. I'm the general counsel for the Pacifica Foundation.
And there was a hearing today about the election at KPFA, the election process, and the PNB. Can you talk about what the issues were and your the position of Pacifica on those issues?
You know, as Pacifica's general counsel, I am acutely aware of the shifting sands of factionalism within the national organization and within each of its constituent radio stations. And those sands are mercurial and shift often, frequently, and dramatically. So I don't think it's appropriate for me to get involved in the shifting of those sands. The arguments that I made before the court are the arguments that I made before the court. They're of record. There was a reporter there. There'll be a reporter's transcript. And so other than that, I really don't want to make any comment.
Well, the argument of Bill Campisi, who's filed the suit, is that if the KPFA, if the Pacifica Board is unhappy with a process or an action of a KPFA in the election, that if they can't resolve it amicably, that the Pacifica should sue KPFA to get them to enforce the procedure of the bylaw from the point of view of the PNB. What do you think about that idea?
The argument that I made in court directly addressed that, and I'm not going to comment.
This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA Radio, WorkWeek Radio, and I'm with Janet Coburn, who is a former member of the local station board at KPFA and also the Pacifica Board Secretary. So, Janet, why don't you talk about what happened here today at court and the issue as you see it?
Okay, so there was a revisit of the, there were two parts to this lawsuit. One had to do with Tom Vorhees, or the third KPFA listener seat, director seat. And Tom Vorhees had been determined by the judge as having won that seat.
On what basis did the judge make that determination?
On the basis of, on the basis of all the information she got from both the Campisi and Ford Green. I mean, it's kind of convoluted, but...
and Bill Campisi has said that the election of Akio to the National Board was proper. Him resigning as a placemat. He said he was a placemark or for another placeholder for another board. What is that all about?
Well, that's a scheme. I mean, and the judge even claimed that. Or
what did the judge say? I mean, there was a scheme.
I can't remember whether it was the word scheme or something like that. And so the question, when he was describing what he did, that he ran and then he resigned, and she responded saying, "And that wasn't a scheme?" I mean, that basically was her response. So, and all of this, of course, is my, it's secondhand, because I was in the courtroom, and we don't have any film of the judge doing that. It's my say.
I mean, the judge apparently has taken a preliminary decision that Tom Vorhees, who is a member of the local station board, should be the proper representative of KPFA board to the Pacifica National Board. Why did she take that action?
Why did she?
Yeah, why did she take that?
She looked at all the arguments, and the arguments about that the resignation of, so-called resignation of Bill Campisi meant that he had withdrawn from the election, and so the fourth ranked person should get that seat, and that's Tom Vorhees. That's my understanding of what she concluded.
And
that the other elections after that, the IVR elections after that, replacement elections, did not, did not count or something like that.
And the issue of Susan De Silva, who was also appointed at the meeting as a local station board member by the KPFA Local Station Board, that is also being challenged?
Yes, so Pacifica challenged that, and that the basis of the challenge is that she was appointed, the bylaws, Article 4, Section 10, allow an appointment by the LSB of a delegate to replace another delegate. But that's only if, and the language of the bylaw is, it doesn't say runner-up, but the highest ranked candidate from the last election that didn't get elected, basically, which has been called the runners-up list. So that bylaw says as long as there are people on that runners-up list, then an appointment is not appropriate. And Campisi has claimed that, well, first of all, KPFA has rejected, they made a motion, or they passed a motion in November of 2017 rejecting the recount.
On what basis did they pass that?
Just, it's somewhat, I don't know, they were saying, oh, it wasn't certified, or different arguments. So the election results from the True Ballot and the 2016 NES were flawed a lot. And one of the flaws was that True Ballot had not included all the individual write-in candidates. They aggregated them, except for 6 of them, something like that. That's one thing. So that meant that the runners-up list was very short, much shorter. Another issue was that the NES had
The National Election Supervisor.
right, had placed on the election website the runners-up that she determined, and some of them were, like at WPFW, for their listener election, she had 3 names that were staff members as runners-up. And at KPFT, one of the certified candidates, the one that was on the ballot for the staff election, who did not win a seat, he should have been a runner-up, but he was not listed on the website. And for KPFA, the listener election, this is just some, she listed just 6 people, right? So in the case of, with the recount identified 20 additional runners-up for KPFA, so a total of 26. So Campisi claimed that because of the 6 were exhausted, which they were, that then they could appoint someone. But the Pacifica's lawyer explained to the judge that there was a recount, and there were 20 more, and the KPFA LSB did not even look at those.
But they're arguing that these people who were on the ballot as write-ins actually were not qualified because they hadn't filled out the paperwork to be on the board.
Well, that's not a legitimate argument. The only requirement for somebody to sit on the board is if they have to be a member of their appropriate class by the date of the record date, and be a member of the membership class, like staff or listener, the appropriate. That's it. And when the recount was done, and then Terry Goodman was working through all the different write-in candidates, that was checked. And as a matter of fact, I was in touch with the general managers asking for verification of the status of these different individuals, and I received that and passed that along. And anyway, so that's all within the recount report that Terry wrote, before the listing.
Now, one of the...
One second. What is this line?
I don't know, just leave it. So now one of the issues is that the majority at the KPFA board were in favor of bankruptcy, for Pacifica filing for bankruptcy. And was it the case that they wanted pro-bankruptcy candidates for these positions that were opening up?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I mean, one of the things that Campisi said in the courtroom today was that he didn't talk about bankruptcy per se, but he was saying about his scheme, or the scheme, that he wrote an email admitting that it was his scheme to be a placeholder, and then he'd resign and all that. So he was saying there was a discussion in public about what they were going to do, to which, by the way, the judge responded saying, and that wasn't a scheme? Anyway, I think I said that already. But it wasn't in public. It was in closed session. So, and he said nobody objected. Well, there was no motion. It was just a discussion. It was a lobbying group within the LSB.
And why?
It wasn't any way, there wasn't an objection. I mean, what's the...
Well, Bill Campisi has argued that the present bylaws are impossible. They prevent KPFA and Pacifica from solving their problems, and through bankruptcy and a judge, you can actually change the bylaws. I mean, is that the argument, that they feel that the structure is not good, and that the only way that the structure can be changed is through bankruptcy?
Well, yeah, the structure can be changed through bankruptcy, but would it be changed to anything that would be what we would want? That's, you could change any, things by different means. It also can be changed within Pacifica with bylaws amendment process. And that hasn't been utilized well, and as a matter of fact, last year, there was an attempt to pass some proposed bylaws amendments, but it just never came to fruition because of deadlines, and deadlines had passed, and it hadn't been shepherded through properly.
Now, KPFA and Pacifica are in a crisis. They're in a financial crisis, and they're losing listeners in some cases. What is the solution to this crisis at KPFA and Pacifica? Short question. Short answer.
Short answer. Well, I know that different people have different ideas, and I know you have a proposal for multimedia, which I totally support and think would expand listenership and attract the kinds of people that Pacifica needs, that KPFA needs. In addition, at one of the recent PNB meetings, actually it was there were two, it was a continuation meeting as well. Every single director gave us their ideas about what can help. That's in a Google spreadsheet, and that is visible. It's in the, I can't remember which meeting. It might have been the February 15th, or no, February 22nd PNB meeting, and it's online on kpftx.org. The link is there, and you can go and look at it in the minutes. And then a new committee has been formed. It's called Strategic Planning Committee. And that committee is supposed to look at all different possibilities of whatever to plan ahead, to increase revenue, to, you know, all kinds of things. So that's getting started. It's actually, the first meeting is March 12th.
So are you going to open this up to the members, supporters of Pacifica for ideas of how KPFA and Pacifica can transform themselves to be much more relevant and vital broadcasting platform?
When you say, when you
Like
do-
question, you know, I mean the Pacifica Board, do you think they'll open it up for members or suggestions from the supporters of Pacifica?
They might very well. And so I'm not a director now. I'm an officer, but so I'm not, you know, I
So you don't make those decisions?
so this is something, if anybody has any ideas, send an email to pnb@pacifica.org with your ideas, and, you know, include your station call letters and, you know, what your position is or whatever, but submit your ideas. Or submit your ideas to any of the committee members, the strategic planning committee members. I happen to be one of them. All the officers